Hi, I'm Wayne from Maglio's Prime Painting in southern British Columbia, Canada. I hope you find this video on residential painting helpful and informative. If you'd like more information, be sure to look me up on my website or my Facebook page. And thanks a lot for watching. Now, what you're going to put the paint on your patch with is really, really important, because the objective is to simulate all of the finished material that's still in good condition that's right next to the patch. So for example, if your paint was put on with a roller, it's going to have a bit of a rough texture to it. It's going to have kind of an orange peel texture. So you need to simulate that with your patch so that your patch isn't smooth. The way the light reflects off the patch is going to determine whether or not you can actually notice it from a distance. I like to use two putty knives. That way you've got one you can kind of keep your little storage of spackle on and determine how much you're going to use. And then on the other one you can select a certain amount that might be just the right amount you need for the job. Now, the other mistake a lot of people make when they're patching is that they put on too much filler. And all that means is if you put on too much, it just means more dust that you have to sand it off. And also it interferes with the good paint. And that makes the patch bigger. And in the case of patching, less is more. So I'm just going to put a little bit on. This is a very small little chip here. And I'm not going to worry too much about getting that smooth or flat, because we can sand that down after it's dry. And I'm going to take my cloth and I'm going to clean off any excess that we don't need. And that'll serve to expose the good paint as well. And I'll end up with a smaller repair. Now I'll show you something interesting on these bigger chips. I'll get just the right amount of spackle on my knife. And what I like to do on these larger chips that are right on the corner of a wall is to use two knives. And this way I can press the spackle on from both sides so that I don't have to use too much, and I can build up a corner. Now again, I've gone and got too much on the paint, so it would be a huge mistake to let that dry. So I'm just going to clean that off nicely with my rag. And we can actually wash this with water later, and any of the residue will also come off. And there we have it. Now I've got spackle on both sides of the corner, and it sticks out over the corner bead here, so that when it dries I'll be able to sand that off in a nice round fashion with the corner bead, and that way it won't show. Okay, the next stage, we have to let that dry, and the next stage will be to determine whether we need a second coat of filler or whether we can sand and get right to the painting. Thank you very much. All right, now we're getting ready to level our spackle, getting it ready for the paint. The important thing with spackle is to make sure that it's really dry. Sometimes it takes overnight for the larger patches. Little patches like this, usually about 4 hours, is what it would normally take, unless you do what I just did, and that speed things up with the help of a blow dryer. Now what we're going to do is take our sandpaper and fold it up into the size that fits your hand, and a size small enough that we can shape it, so that we don't sand this good paint that we see here on the side of the spackle. we want to try to spare as much of the original finish as possible, and we're just going to focus on the corner itself. You notice that I'm working just from one side at a time. Smoothing this off. I'm not pressing too hard because it is a corner patch, so if I press too hard I'll obviously crack the spackle off. And we don't want to do that. So this is going to be a three-step process. I'm going to sand from each side until I'm flush with the wall, shaping my paper as I go so that it best fits the patch. Going very careful on these larger chips just to make sure that the spackle had time to dry. Otherwise it'll just smoosh on me instead of sanding nicely like it is. But so far so good. That looks a little high there, so we're going to try to level that. Run my thumb up. Okay, so there, this side is nice and smooth, and I'm just going to slip in front of the camera to the other side and repeat the process. Again, I'm using 150, which is fairly fine sandpaper. Now, what's happened now is we've sanded both sides, so we have a razor sharp edge where just where the spackle is, and then we have a rounder edge where the metal bead from the drywall corner guard is here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sandpaper on an angle, and I'm just going to lightly brush that spackle and put a rounded edge on it to match the drywall. Now the next thing that we're going to do to make sure that we're finished sanding, so we're going to take our rag, and it's a little bit damp, and that'll help clean off this sanding dust. And we're just going to run our damp rag up the wall and clean off our excess dust. And then we'll be left, hopefully, with just the patches. Perfect. Okay. Now we're ready to take a look at this paint that, like I said before, it's been stored for 5 years. It's been stored in the garage, and it has some rust on the top of the lid here. I don't know what to expect when we open the can. In most cases, we're going to have a film on top of the paint surface inside. But generally, the paint is good. The mistake a lot of people make is they run out to the paint store with the code, the number off the lid or the color chip. They buy a new can of paint. That can be a problem because years later, the colorants at the paint store have all been changed out, of course. Even the machine might be different. The amounts of colorant that actually go into that can of paint might be a little bit different as well. So you could end up with a brand new can of paint that doesn't match your existing 5-year-old paint color. So I personally like to use existing paint from the original paint job if it's available. Now, having said that, when we open our can of paint, like I said, we don't quite know what to expect. Now inside here we have some clear syrupy material on top of the paint, but the paint is still stirrable, and so we're going to stir this paint, of course. But one thing I wanted to point out was usually you're going to see old dried paint or rust particles around the edge of the lid. That's why whenever you have to use a lot of paint, if we were going to repaint this whole portion of the wall, for example, you want to make sure you strain the paint first using just ordinary household cheesecloth, and just put this over the lid of a clean container. Mix your paint thoroughly with a paint stick, and then pour it through the cheesecloth, through 2 layers of cheesecloth preferably, into the new container. And that'll filter out any of these old paint particles and rust particles that might happen to be in the upper area here, so that you won't
Spread them out onto your wall with a roller.
Now, in this case, we're just concerned with these little paint chips, so we're not going to bother to filter this through a cheesecloth. It's not necessary. But I am going to get a stir stick and blend this paint, and then I'll let you see the consistency of a good can of paint that's been sitting around for 5 years. Now I'm just midway through the process of stirring this paint. It's suffered, I don't know if you can see there, because it's probably a shadow inside this can, but it has suffered a little bit of moisture loss due to the 5-year storage. But that's fine. I've just added a little bit of household water there, maybe an ounce of household water into this third of a gallon of paint, and it's coming along nicely. Another few minutes of stirring, maybe a minute or two, and it'll be ready to go. Okay, starting to look pretty good. That's about the right consistency there for our Townsend Harbor Brown colored paint. And one thing about paint, you can see the original paint even is a different color when it's wet than it is on the wall. So whenever you're actually criticizing or analyzing your finished product on the wall, you have to make sure that that paint is thoroughly dry before you can distinguish between it, where the chip is, and the wall itself. Now, the other thing I should say about this particular touch-up is because of the dark color, we might be better off to do 2 coats. The color of the filler is going to show through the first coat, and it may look finished, but I think the best strategy here is to put on 1 coat and dry it thoroughly. You can use the hair dryer gently if you want to speed up the process, and then apply a 2nd coat. Now again, we don't want too much paint on. We want it as thin as possible. Because we want to blend this paint with the existing wall. If we put big gobs of paint on there, then again we're going to have a sheen difference, and it's going to show. The brush I'm going to choose for this is this the smallest artist brush out of the 3, because these chips are fairly small, and I'm just going to position my palm onto the wall surface, and I'm going to dab the paint on instead of stroking it on. If I dab it on, I can try to simulate the texture left by the roller when this paint was originally applied. A little bit. Start here at the top. Again, the idea is less is more. We don't want to have another coat of paint over the existing paint that's in good condition. Start with the outside. Work to the inside. And I'll just move to the other side. Same as we did when we applied our filler. Not too much. We'll also have runs if I put too much paint on. And I'm just going to dab that, called stippling, so that after our 2nd coat we'll end up with an orange peel type roller texture. The way the light hits the paint determines whether or not you can see the patch. And if the paint in some areas is orange peel like the roller and smooth like a brush, then even though the color is the same, the patch is going to show. If we had a large patch to do on this wall, say for instance a hole in the drywall, I'd use a mini roller to feather the paint over the patch into the old paint, so that we'd have the same texture as well as the same color. Back over this just to make sure we don't end up with a run from too much paint. There you have it. That's the first coat, which I'll dry with the hair dryer to speed up the process a little bit. Alright, I think we're dry enough. Time to do our 2nd coat now. Now again, we're just going to take a little bit with our artist brush. We're going to go back to these areas. They're even so nicely drying now, it's hard to see where our original patches were, which is exactly what we want. Again, I'm stippling this, and I'm getting a bit of a an orange peel roller effect that way. And hardly ever know that there was something there before. We'll have a look in a few minutes. Well, there we go. All done. Hopefully that helps you keep your paint job looking fresh and beautiful for the years to come. Again, I'm Wayne Maglio of Prime Painting. I look forward to answering any of your questions, so please feel free to send me any emails or give me a phone call. Thank you very much. Have a great day.